Production funding for Behind the Headlines is made possible in part by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Back to school with Bartlett, Germantown, and Collierville tonight on Behind the Headlines. I'm Eric Barnes, publisher of the Memphis Daily News. Thanks for joining us. I'm joined tonight by superintendents from a number of the suburban schools, starting with David Stevens from Bartlett. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
John Atkin, superintendent in the Collierville schools. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
And Jason Manuel is superintendent of the Germantown schools. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Along with Bill Dries, senior reporter with the Memphis Daily News. We'll go through everything kind of going on in each of your separate school systems, and I'll note that we're going to try to get all the superintendents from the municipal schools. When this is aired, we'll have had Dorsey Hobson on from Shelby County Schools. I'll start with you, John. You had a big announcement in the opening of the big high school, a couple weeks ago,
right.
$100 million project. What does it say that was possible, 4 years into Collierville having its own independent school district? Is there something symbolic about that, or is it more just a facility that meets the needs and that's all it is?
Well, I think it's symbolic with the formation of the district, but more importantly, I do think it meets the needs of a growing community. When we opened, we actually had to forge interlocal agreements with Jason and Germantown to handle capacity for a few years until we could decide what route to take. But as the town has grown, student population has grown, we immediately noticed that we had to handle some capacity issues. So a lot of marketing, a lot of thought, research went into, and we ended up with the One Town, One School campaign to build one big high school to serve the community for a lot of years. And yeah, we had grand opening on August the 5th. We've been in it now almost 3 weeks, and things are going smoothly. Like any house under construction, some punch list items still working through. A little behind on athletic facilities, but those are rounding into shape as well. So we hope to have everything completed here pretty soon and get off to a little bit more normal routine now.
Yeah, and I'll go to Bartlett. You all have begun construction, begun renovation of your high school?
We are right in the middle of it. We are doing about a $60 million renovation project to the high school. Our situation is a little different than Collierville because in Bartlett, we did not have a big piece of land to go out and build a school. And I think, John, you guys needed another middle school. So it worked there. Well, we needed that facility. And what had happened over the period of time when we started our district is as growth went out into eastern part of Shelby County, Bartlett that school had dwindled down in numbers, and to no fault of anyone, I tell folks that they were having to build schools. They had to build Houston High School, they had to build Cordova High School, they built Southwind Arlington. So a lot of those dollars were going there, and when we took over the facility, our auditorium was built in 1917, the gym 1950. The newest building was over 40 years ago. So we really needed to look at that and see what was going to work for the city of Bartlett, for our school district to go try to find land that wasn't available, build a new school, or take that one and do a major renovation. So it has been a little bit of a challenge. They did a lot of demolition over the summer, but we've got it to the point where we're holding classes. Things are going better than I expected, going really well, and they're going to start pouring concrete in the next couple weeks, and buildings will start going up. So,
and we just looked at some renderings, I should say, architectural renderings
right.
of what's to come. For you, and we'll come back to John on this, but to what extent was this demand for the school a function of, was the demand there, and you sort of addressed this, but was the demand there 4 years ago, 5 years ago, before school consolidation and deconsolidation, or is this a response to something that's happened in the last 4 years?
I think it's a response to something that's happened in the last 4 years, because I think what you have now, and I tell people this all the time, we have one high school in the city, and back in old Shelby County, I believe we had 8 high schools, so if you did one thing at one, well, we need to do it at all to be fair and equitable. But once you have one high school, our mayor, our board of aldermen, our school board, they're all focusing on that one school. So now that's how we were able to, with the funding through our city, to be able to do this project. And I think that's one of the things that's exciting about our municipal districts, is that we have a community that is focused on a subset of schools. So it really helps us keep that laser focus and try to make sure that what we're doing is the best. And not being so big is,
Yeah.
is a good thing. So.
Germantown schools, you've got construction. I think we don't have photos of some of the construction, but you've got on the elementary side construction going on. What's happening there, and just generally with your schools in terms of the investment, and again, 4 years into being an independent school district.
And I think we were all experiencing the same things in Shelby County. We inherited $26 million in deferred maintenance, where we had roofs, HVACs that were long past their lifespans, and so we're doing Band-Aid repairs, trying to get parts for products. So we've invested over $16 million in deferred maintenance and lowered our deferred maintenance, but we've also put in a total of $55 million in capital improvements. So we are growing the same. We've increased by 900 students in our district, and so we are building a new $30 million elementary school. We're up out of the ground. They're doing block, and right now they poured foundations there at Forest Hill. Poplar Pike is the location of the school. But also at Riverdale, at our middle school level, we got rid of 22 portables that had been there over 20 years, and we had a new expansion there. So we are growing, but at the same time fixing those things that had been neglected in our district.
And before I go to Bill, just the status for those who don't follow it as closely as I'm sure you do, and other people in Germantown, the status of the 3 Germantown schools that stayed with the Shelby County school system that aren't part of your municipal school district. What is happening there? Do negotiations continue? Or?
No, not at this time. We had tried to offer money, and the city was working with the school district to try to get back Germantown Elementary at first, or Germantown Middle and High, but our first priority was at the elementary school level, and they were not interested in taking an offer from us or us buying that school back from them. So we made that decision before we went on ahead and broke ground on the new elementary school. But that is something that the city would always be interested in. The school district would always be interested in working with Shelby County Schools to buy back those schools.
Okay. Bill Drees.
So Jason, in your case, the Riverdale expansion that you did, you added classrooms there, but it was more than just building more classrooms.
Yes.
And I think you've all experienced this, that you're not only building new schools or renovating schools for your school district, you're also taking a big step ahead, because when you build a school today, it's a lot different than maybe when you built one 10 years ago.
Yeah, so we look at lots of things. How we teach has changed, and I know all of us have one-to-one initiatives where we're adding devices in our schools, and to do that you have to change the infrastructure of the broadband. So if you've got all those children on devices in your school, how are you doing that? But at the same time, how the teachers teach in those classrooms, you've got to look at how the technology really integrates with what they're doing in those settings. So that's one of those changes, the use of natural light. And of course, we're all concerned about security, so we're looking through a new lens of how do you build a school to protect against things that could happen in the future. But yes, it has changed. We're changing the brand of what education looks like.
Mm-hmm. And David, at Bartlett High School, you have a really big campus that's been added to over a century. I mean, the auditorium was what went first in
1917.
Yeah, more than 100 years old now. So how do you do that in a renovation where you're remaking the campus while students are still going to school?
Yeah, that was the thing when we sat down with Fleming Architectural Firm and looked at this, and I was saying, I don't see how we're going to be able to pull this off. But it's amazing. The planning, working with Flintco Linkus, the 2 contractors, they've done a tremendous job of how we're phasing it, timing things. Fall break is coming up. They have work that is planned during those days, Christmas break. The summer, it was just the number of people out there. So we have this thing phased over a 2-year period. One of the exciting things, and I believe Jason hit on that, was the safety and security of getting all of those separated buildings under basically one roof with connectors, with courtyards. So we're excited about what that's going to do, but it has been a challenge. But I'll say our teachers and our students and our parents have been so understanding and flexible, because I think they can see what's coming on. The exciting thing about this, it's not like all of a sudden in 2 years we're going to hand the building over. There will be parts of it that will go online this spring. Some new vocational classrooms will be completed this spring, some other classrooms around the first of the year. So we'll be kind of rolling these out so all of our students will be able to experience some of the newness. But we're excited about it, and we think it's going to be a big thing for the city of Bartlett of having that facility.
John, the scale of Collierville High School is, I mean, you could go on and on with all of the stats and specs for that for that building, but you also considered safety in it too. I think when parents are folks like me are coming through looking at everything. We're looking at the auto shop, we're looking at all of the tech stuff, the STEM stuff, and you also considered safety in it too.
Yeah.
How often did parents ask a lot about that?
Oh yeah, I mean it's at the forefront of all of our conversations now, and a real focus at state and national levels, and that's the way of the world for us as school administrators now. It doesn't go away, and it shouldn't. So first and foremost, we have to make sure that that building is secure. All of us had to undergo safety audits this past year through Homeland Security and some of the statewide people in response to applying for grants, which we're now in the process of putting those grants through to enhance not only the new high school, but going through all of our other 8 buildings, and say some of those were built back in the 70s as well, Collierville Elementary School. What can we do to better the measures for security at those schools as well? And you look at things such as perimeter, you look at windows, you look at landscape, you look at access. But I'm speaking on my experience at Shelby County Schools, and I have to give them a lot of credit. Even back then, they saw this. So as a response to Columbine, they started doing a lot of the access controls, the card swipes, the cameras in the buildings. So many of those things have been carried forward to all of our buildings, and so we just try to improve on that. All of our buildings will eventually have the safety corridor, the safety vestibule that you have to check in and then go through a scanner to identify any types of sexual offenders or background check problems. So all of us kind of have that same model, and it's just keeping up with the technology piece as things change.
You all have been in education for a long time.
Does
it? And Columbine was, over 20-something years ago, and then obviously the mass shooting in Florida this year, which struck a nerve with students around the country, and the protests and the march in Washington. Do you also look at this now from a mental health point of view? I mean, even things of bullying, things of kids who are estranged, social media. I mean, you don't run fortresses, right? I mean, right. You can only do so much in terms of physical security, I assume. I'll turn to you first. I mean, how do you guys address that? Those issues of bullying, social media, kids who are estranged. Is there some intervention side there that you pursue in a different way now?
I think it's multifaceted. I don't think there's going to be a magic bullet or solution that's going to solve this problem. Bullying and mental health is a national issue, and I think that when we look at our comprehensive counseling programs and really how we're serving students as they're coming up through our school district, we have to be ready to identify those students who are struggling or having issues and providing the supports that they need. We use the term whole child in the district. We are not just focused on the numbers and academics. We want to make sure that we are providing those supports for children who do have other issues, so that we can remove those barriers so that they can learn.
In terms of bullying, I can remember being in high school and junior high. That was just part of it. I mean, you were supposed to just tough it out, and that the sort of hierarchy. I tell my teenage kids that, or now one's a 20-year-old, and they're just horrified at the way things worked back then. I mean, I'll turn to you, David. I mean, what do you do about bullying, and how proactive are you? And where does the barrier with bullying, be it cyberbullying or things that are said outside of school? Are there lines now? If something is said outside of school, is it hands off, or do you kind of try to look at the whole experience of the kid and the bullying they might experience?
You have to look at the whole experience, and I think the key to this is early intervention, trying to catch things before they spiral out of control. Things that like you were saying, Eric, when I was in school 20 years ago, somebody say something, you just kind of toughen up and go on. Now we say, if you see something, say something. If something's happening, intervene. And I think our young people are growing up in that culture of, hey, this isn't right. Like you were saying with your son, he was appalled that this isn't right. And our teachers we're always looking at all facets of how our students are interacting. Social media is it's such a challenge. It can do so many good things, but then on the other hand, we spend a lot of time looking at that, monitoring that, and I think it's that relationship between the teacher and the student. We talk about creating that positive culture where you feel safe. You feel safe in that classroom. If I raise my hand and ask a question, nobody's going to look at me and say, well, that was a stupid question. Or if I go to the restroom, I feel safe. Or if I'm walking down the hall. So we constantly talk about that culture and that those teachers building those relationships with students. And I think that's what happens sometimes. Kids, they feel alienated or they don't feel like they can connect. And we want to have our students be able to connect while they're at school.
Generally, I mean, I think maybe people who listen who don't have kids or haven't had, when do your kids in the Collierville school system, probably true of all of you, but I'll point to you, get onto social media? It's a lot younger than people might realize.
Much younger. I'm a grandparent of 3-year-old twins now, and you know the iPad is not social media, but that technological piece of that is already started in on them. So you have to remove the iPad. They start getting the phones at a much earlier age than. I'm old school than I think they should.
I mean, you've got 4th graders, 5th graders.
Oh gosh, yes. Yeah. Oh gosh, yeah. And and part of that, a parent will tell you, is safety. If they're at school or they're somewhere with friends or they're spending the night, they want them to have that so they can contact them. We've gone through that battle for a long time. But David and Jason both mentioned it. Staying ahead of social media is one of the biggest challenges we have. And you mentioned the differences in bullying now and cyberbullying. It doesn't go away now. If our day, if you were got in a fight at school or whatever, you fought and it was over with, but now they go home and they post pictures and they send Snapchat and Instagram, and that's the challenge. And when it bleeds back into the classroom or back into the school environment, that's when we have to get involved, because it causes distractions in the learning environment. So it does have a little blend that way, but it's all of us, Jason mentioned the technology initiatives that all of us have. Part of a technology initiative is education. If you're going to give a kid a device, you have to teach them all those things about digital citizenship, and parents have to take courses as well. So part of that deal about monitoring social media accounts, filtering, that's all part of that technology initiative. Right. So it's kind of a global look at everything we're dealing with.
Right. 10 minutes left, Bill.
Okay. You've got a capacity of 3,000 at Collierville High School, I believe. It's the largest.
A little bit over.
A little bit over. Mm-hmm. So it's the largest high school in the state?
I think on campus enrollment it is. I think if you put David's 9th grade and our 10 and 12, we're 1 and 2 in the state. So, but his 9th grade's in a separate building.
All right. So to each of you, the model for legacy Shelby County schools was always bigger high schools than Memphis City schools had. How does having, first of all, a single high school in your communities and a high school that's maybe larger than you had in the past, how do you think that affects the community at large? Does it promote growth? Does it have its drawbacks? How do you think a high school that large?
I do think it promotes growth, and that's kind of why we initiated the One Town, One School campaign, because I relied on past experiences as well. I was a principal at Houston High School. I taught at Collierville High School. So when you have 2 high schools in a community, yes, it was a successful model, but I also was always jealous of Collierville, and every store in the community would have the Dragons, so you could go here and there and everywhere, and it was all about Friday night football, and Houston was sitting there at that time. You had Germantown in there in the community and big rivals, but they were in the same community, and I wanted to see that whole community come together, and I think we are seeing the results of that as growth is happening in Collierville. People are moving to Collierville. Well, all of us, people are moving to those communities, and I think that yes, the bigger high school does have some challenges that we have to, to stay on top of. But I mean, I think having one school in the town, one school, everybody a dragon eventually is a great campaign.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the advantage we had is when we started our district, we had more middle schools than we had students. So it worked to take Chatillon, turn it into a 9th grade academy off campus. So I can take 750 students, and that helps alleviate that crowding on campus. And we have a little over 2,000 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. So that has been, when that happened 5 years ago, a lot of people in the community were like, oh no, this 9th grade academy model. But we've seen a lot of success from that. It's worked really well. But it's those things you have to look at, and I think John hit it, was if your community split between 2 schools, then it's this, yes, it's a great rivalry on Friday night, but then you're splitting resources. I know Bartlett and Bolton, when I was principal of Bolton, 75% of the kids when I was principal lived in the city limits of Bartlett, and it was always this, there's only so many dollars that the community can invest into schools, but having that one school in our city has been great, and by us having that academy, it's helped with that crowding piece.
In Germantown, you have Houston High School. Germantown High School is part of Shelby County Schools. So how does the dynamic work in Germantown?
Well, I think for us, we have a large number of the residents that attend Houston High School. I think what you're seeing with Germantown High School is there's a large percentage of students from outside of Germantown that attend that school. So it is one of their optional schools that they use, even though it's within our city limits. But I think what's important for us is it's a good fiscal model to have a school the size that we have, and we have 1,900 students in ours. Because in order to offer the AP classes, the dual enrollment classes, and the state really has an initiative around EPSOs, early post-secondary opportunities for students, whether I want to do a TCAP program like they're doing in Bartlett, vocational programs, CTE programs, I have to have a school that's a certain size to have the staff to do that. The smaller the school, the harder it is to offer all those programs and prepare students to move on to that next step in their education.
So are we moving to a comprehensive high school model? Is everyone in education today considering basically a return to that and a reconfiguration?
That is a state initiative. That is one of their objectives that they have given us to drive us to what we are supposed to do for students.
You know, and I think the thing that we've seen, I was talking to some folks yesterday about the medical device industry that's in Bartlett and our advanced machining program we have, where we have $100,000 CNC machines in the classroom that our students are using. You know, the old days of the career technical, of being kind of the greasy, grimy work, you know, yeah, you still work with your hands, but it is so advanced as far as the technology and the skills that our students have that just because a student doesn't go to a 4-year university, they can still go to community college or a TCAT, that type of program, and come out and have a excellent opportunity in the workforce. And the thing that we have to work at as educators is making sure that all of our students are getting those skills that they need to be successful, whatever that next step is. But we have seen kind of a flip on that, where there was at one point, I remember they did away back in the day with all the wood shops. When I was in high school, it was one of the best classes I ever took. You know, I learned how to cut a board and read a ruler and do those things. But now it's funny how the pendulum's kind of swinging back in that direction.
You talked about mandates from the state or pressure from the state, but one, obviously a big one, is Tennessee Ready and the school testing. I'll start with you, John. Your take on where you are, as I guess you can only speak for yourself. I mean, your take on some of the problems that have been with the testing. Do you like the testing? Should there be these statewide standards?
Well, I think all of us are fine with accountability, fine with measuring standards in some form. People have heard across the state have heard me. The testing window this past year in administration was a disaster for us with the online administration, particularly in a high school. It took 3 and 4 days to give a test. So, you know, that led to a lot of disastrous things and just kids just kind of giving up and, you know, not really trying their best. So, you know, we're going to spend a lot of time this year hoping, and, you know, in all of our talks with the commissioner, we've got I know the timing of this with the listening tour on the day of this taping.
Yeah, the governor's in town as we take.
Right. We have to get the test right this year. I appreciate the reduction of some tests. They are doing some of that, but they've got to figure out a way to get this right, because they've lost a lot of credibility with students and teachers and parents across the state.
But do you worry? I mean, it's an election year, going to have some degree of a new administration. It might be a wholesale changeover in terms of party. It might be less so. I mean, is that going to set it back another year? And again, you're being judged and measured on many levels as the superintendent, your teachers, and your students on these. I don't think anyone say these tests were not administered very well.
Right. I think the whole problem I have with I believe that we do need accountability. We need to have high standards. We need to teach it. But to distill down everything that happened in a child's life in that school year, everything to a one-day test, and now you're going to say whether that superintendent, that teacher, that school, and that school now is going to get a grade based on what that child did on that one day, I think we've kind of lost balance. I tell people it's a piece of the pie, and it's something we definitely need to look at, and we need to have accountability. But it's like we've almost said this is 100% of it, where it needs to be. There needs to be a more of a balanced approach.
Okay, moving from testing, another thing you'll hear from parents, you know, they'll say there's too much testing, testing. They'll also say there's too much homework. And there are different philosophies among schools, among educators, about how much homework, and maybe we focus on the high school, where you've got kids on college prep tracks, Should they be doing a ton of homework? Should they not? Should they have family time and not? Where is your philosophy on this question of the volume of homework kids should have?
I think it's about the balance. I experienced it with my own son. He's taken all AP and dual enrollment courses, and he'll graduate with over 18 credits, college credits, by the time he leaves the high school. And he spends 3 to 4 hours a night easily doing his homework. But that's his choice to really look at the rigor. I think what's more important is looking at the quality of homework. Are you doing something, instead of doing 50 problems that are the same type of skill, can you show mastery with fewer problems? So it all depends upon the type of homework that the students have. So I'm not opposed to homework. I think it is something important. You have to prepare yourself. But even nationally, they're looking at flipped classrooms where students are actually learning the lesson at night, watching videos on their devices, and they come back and they practice their skills in the classroom.
And really, 30 seconds, at the elementary level and into lower middle school, the volume of homework and the feedback you get from parents.
And what we've done, there's been some national studies out there about the amount of time at certain grade levels, and we really try to push that with our teachers, because if a student's taking 5 subjects and each teacher gives them an hour of homework, that's 5, so we really try to look at the balanced.
Right, okay. Well, that is all the time we have. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Bill, and thank you for joining us. Join us again next week.